Hi, I'm Triumph, and I wanted to talk about Chuck Schumer's very weird interview with Chris Hayes. He just completely missed. I think he missed his point. And look, most politicians know more about politics than I, and most of the public do know. But my problem is when they're disagreeing with each other. In fact, when the majority of Democratic senators and Congress and House members are saying one thing and you're saying the other, saying, hey, we haven't considered this. Like Jasmine Crockett said, like, look, we know that. We've all made this calculation, and most of us agreed together that this is the right solution. You are not explaining why your point is actually more significant than ours. But let's just go into it. Sorry.
It was on the day of the shutdown being averted. And you came on the program, you said why you thought it was important. And since then, we've had this enormous backlash. And obviously, you're in politics a long time. You understand this comes with the territory. Has it made you rethink anything?
No, look, I knew when I made this decision I'd get a lot of flack. I'm a smart politician. I can read what people want. But I thought, even though the CR was
I gotta disagree with him on that point. I gotta disagree because he canceled some book tours because of the flack and pushback he was getting, unless he meant from other Congress people, right? But he had a book tour where he's going off about his book about anti-Semitism, which there is a real anti-Semitism problem in America. However, people like Chuck Schumer assume that all anti-Semitic people are the pro-Palestinian protesters. Are there some anti-Semites in those protests? Statistically, probably. However, they're protesting the suffering of Palestinian people by the hands of the Israeli state, not just by the nature of Israeli existence. Even when they say phrases like from the river to the sea, if you ask most of them what that means, I don't think they believe that Israel's people should die. They probably have a position that Israelis need to be somewhere else, if that's the most extreme position they'll have. I don't have that same take. I don't say from the river to the sea. I don't claim to be not. The point is, he thinks he's aware of how politics and how optics look, but he's about to go on a book tour that's largely antithetical to at least younger Democratic voters' opinions, and obviously horrible. Even if they liked that book, like older Democrats, by and large, are in line with the pro-Israeli U.S. government position or whatnot in general. But again, we're all generally mad about his decision to sign for the CR. To go along, Trump praising you means you and Democrats are not in the same step. But yeah, so he had a book tour, canceled it because of the backlash. You can just look a little bit. Poster. Chuck Schumer postpones a book tour amid liberal criticism over spending vote. Right, watching the Senate. Is this MSNBC? I thought I clicked AP News. Oh no, MSN is okay. Doesn't matter. Cancellation in events in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and other cities have made widespread criticism from the party's liberal base over Schumer's vote to move forward over Republican spending legislation last week. Rita Heller, a representative from Schumer's book, said the tour would be rescheduled due to security concerns. Now, is he getting death threats? It's hard for me to know how serious death threats are. I'm not famous enough to have received death threats and know how much it actually impacts you, but you gotta know better. Why even do this and have a book tour at the same time?
terrible bill and would allow within the CR the administration to move things around. I thought a shutdown was so much worse, 20 times worse. And let me explain why so people understand it. Under a shutdown, the executive branch has absolute power to determine what is, quote, essential.
Right.
They have the sole power. Court rulings have said the courts have no say. Right. Now, under normal time, if it was a shutdown, okay, it'd be a Republican government. They do that. You have these fanatics, right, these anti-government vicious.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys are sensing a problem here, but they're already doing that, right? Now the question is, to what degree does it increase or decrease? But like they already are just deciding what is and isn't essential. That's what Elon Musk's entire thing has been deciding, what stuff is waste and fraud. Like the fraud part is interesting because he's failed to prove what is or isn't fraud, and many reporters or news agencies have looked into it and shown that they're actually things that he's claiming is fraud are not fraud. Like his Social Security, people that are 150 years old getting Social Security, like that. Apparently, there was some sort of code related. We'll say miscommunication, but there were not super old people getting dead people, not dead people getting Social Security. But there has been people who have had their payments impacted. I don't know if it's specifically for Social Security, but there's some video. We'll watch that later. We'll get back to that. But like, people are already doing that, and Trump is already ignoring courts. Like they're deporting people. There are federal courts saying, "Hey, stop! You can't do that. We have to. There's no due process. You stop. Bring these people back." And he's ignoring that. And they're using interesting language about jurisdiction and whatnot. They're already doing it. Now, if your argument is it's going to be worse, I'd love to hear how it's going to be considerably worse. Because the courts are the last line of defense, but they're walking over that line. Not the last fence of defense, not the last gate. It's a line. You can just step over lines.
Vicious nihilists in charge. They can say anything. Anything is not essential. So it could have been today if we were in the shutdown. They said, feeding hungry children, not essential. Eliminate SNAP. 2 days from now, the only thing we need in transportation are air traffic controllers. Cut off all mass transit funding to New York and the other cities of the country, all transit funding. Day 6, Medicaid. They could cut off Medicaid almost totally. So within 2 weeks.
Again, they're already attempting to do that within the range that they think is reasonable. Like, in any regard that they wouldn't do that with because like they don't care about the courts or what is or even the Constitution at this point. They don't care about any of that. They care about what they individually think is, for one, profitable for them and their friends and their not shareholders. Well, I guess shareholders for like the friends of Trump, but stakeholders. That's the term I'm looking for. But two, like they do have some visions on what is functional for a country. And again, it's not one with immigrants because they're just getting rid of immigrants in general, right? They just want to get rid of that, right? They do think regulation is objectively bad. So they think if there are some risk incurred with decreased regulation, it's offset by the increase in productivity. Like that's just a general position held by most libertarians to conservatives, right? Like they already are going to do that in any capacity. And within the range that they think they'll get pushback, that's not going to be stopped by this CR passing or the government not shutting down. Like they already whatever. I just haven't seen evidence that that there's a line that exists with the courts that doesn't exist without the courts. When it comes to public opinion,
they could just so decimate the federal government, almost throwing a bomb at it, that we could never recover. And wait, one more thing that's worse. There's no exit ramp. In other words, how do you get out of the shutdown? Solely up to the executive branch. And one Republican senator who's close to these horrible Doge Musk people said that they expected to close it down for 6 months, 9 months, till the whole federal government was obliterated. Musk's dream to get $2 trillion out of the federal government could happen under a shutdown. So I felt the very people who are upset now, if we went through with the shutdown and all these things happened, would be coming 2-3 weeks later and saying, get it open, get SNAP open, get mass transit open. I'd say,
again, he's already planning, and Trump is planning to assist him with getting $2 trillion in cut, right? He already wants to do that. That's already the goal with or without the shutdown, right? And the CR is part of the process that he means to help him do that.
Well, it's a shutdown. We can't. They said, well, why'd you let that happen? So one more thing. Yeah. I knew it.
Let me hesitate on the CR part. I'm not knowledgeable enough about scratch that bit, but they already do plan to get $2 trillion out. Like,
take a lot of flack. But you know, when you're a leader, sometimes you have to do things that you know are right, despite the consequences. I've always said to people in politics, the higher up you climb, the more fierce the winds blow. The only thing that keeps you from being blown off course is your internal gyroscope. That's what I used.
So I take that seriously, that sort of catastrophic nature.
I thought so long and hard about it.
Well, I want to sort of pivot it a little to more of a tactical decision, because there was something that happened here that doesn't normally happen, which is they knew they needed Democratic votes and they cut you out entirely. Now, when that has happened before, Republicans have filibustered successfully and forced Democrats to the table. And so just purely at the level of how the tactics brought us to this point, I want to play some of the criticism, again, not from like backseat drivers or not from me on cable news, but people like Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi. Take a listen.
Look, Chuck and I disagreed as it relates to the approach and outcome.
I think there is a deep sense.
I'm going to make a separate video. I don't like Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi, not for the same reasons Republicans or people to the right of, we'll say to the right in general, even if you consider yourself an independent, but you voted for Trump, like that type of person has a perspective of a Nancy Pelosi or whatnot. Like they're just like, oh, this person, like, there's like this cabal of Democratic people doing this. It's like, no, they just make bad decisions and decisions in the interest of their own wallets, right? Like they don't make decisions that benefit bad economic principles, and most of them still function on the idea that there's some sort of trickle down. They don't say it, but they operate as if they believe in some sort of trickle down economics. But we'll talk about Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and old Democrats later, and I want to get rid of them in the sense of like being them voting out.
Of outrage and betrayal. And this is not just about progressive Democrats. This is across the board, the entire party.
I still support Senator Schumer as leader, but I think the only way that we are going to be effective as a caucus is if we change our tactics.
I would have liked to see, when Chuck Schumer had leverage here, to say we need A, B, C, and D for the Democratic Party and force the Republicans to meet him halfway on those issues.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day.
They said, okay, he said leverage. I think it was the governor.
And Nancy Pelosi said, I myself.
I mean, this is an instance of Democrats who, younger progressive Democrats like myself, we don't even like. I don't like Jeff. We like AOC, obviously. She's not like perfect, but compared to everybody else, better, right? And that's among this the same way that most people to the right view the people they vote for. But again, I don't like Jeffries. I don't like Pelosi. Even they were like, "What the fuck, Chuck? Chuck, what are you doing?" Like, we can fight for it. Like, sometimes the government does shut down. Bad things happen. Bad things are already happening. So the idea is, can we stop something happening? All of the bad things that he's saying are going to happen are already along their course with happening, right?
Don't give away anything for nothing. I think that's what
the only leverage we had. They weren't going to negotiate with us. So there were two choices only. It would be nice if we had a third choice. We tried to get that third choice with the 30-day extension that Patty Murray tried to get some more moderate Republicans on the Appropriations Committee to go along. They wouldn't. So we were faced only the Senate, not the House. They had it a little easier because they could vote no against the CR and not cause a shutdown. Right. But in the Senate, the only two choices were these choices, period. And the choice of the shutdown was so severe. You're giving them the keys to the city. Why would we? Look, this guy, the worst of them all, is this guy who's head of OMB named Vogt, V-O-U-G-H-T. But people here.
See, again, sorry for repeating myself when talking about his criticism, but again, like, he's repeating himself. Like, I know at some point in the video, Hayes gets to, like, some of the issues with it, and he doesn't. And again, he's not aggressive. He's not pushing, because politicians, right, left, all of them, they don't like getting pushed back. So when you say something that's like, "Hey, that point's kind of bad," I'm like, "Oh, you're propaganda," but like, all of them understand everything that you're saying. You just don't understand what you're saying, right?
The word vote. He already has a plan to shut down a large church.
He's doing it right now.
No, he cannot. Now, if you don't have a shutdown, you can go to court. Right. And we've had some successful results in the courts.
Important. Hayes has just said he's doing it right now, and he says no, but he doesn't elaborate in detail. But actually, no. He does. His point is the courts. Like I mentioned, the court stuff earlier, but they are shutting down the government. Like, it's not a government shutdown, right? But they're on they're ramping down the government. At least when it comes to like jobs, right? They're replacing people with Trump loyalists. Like that was, it's part of the Project 2025, but also just part of just what Trump wants. Like, you don't need Project 2025 to know that. And just like, Trump's just fired people who didn't listen to him. He just consistently did that up until the 2020 election. Like, you just like people who weren't telling him that the election was stolen, you get rid of them.
A lot of the judges we put in, Chris, the 235, we've won about 85% of the cases. Shut down, no court, they make the decision, and they can make it quickly, easily, and across the whole federal government, not just the things that were in the CR.
But here's to me my understanding of the critique that's broader than the specifics here, which is about the level and depth of crisis we're in and the appropriate tactics to meet them. Mm-hmm. And so what I think people think is, first of all, we all know the Senate functions on unanimous consent. That's how anything happens. Mm-hmm. We've watched real pains in the butt, Tommy Tuberville, basically bring the place to a halt, just denying unanimous consent because he was mad the Department of Defense might somewhere pay for a portion, right? The idea of how cataclysmic that shutdown, I hear what you're saying. But what I'm hearing from people, and there's a lot of them, is right now a crisis is happening unlike anything the Republic has faced, maybe since even the Civil War. Right. Most Americans don't quite grasp it. And it's your job as the most powerful Democrat to use whatever tactics you have to communicate that. And by going along with this, you have missed this opportunity to tell the nation just how bad it is.
There's only one choice to going along with.
That's fair, right? That's a fair criticism, right? Like, his general position is like, hey, like, are things as bad as everyone's saying it is? It's kind of the same issue with when Trump won in the first place, and Democrats were they went from democracy's on the ballot. This is the most important election in history. America won't even exist. Like, they weren't doing it the same level that Trump was doing it, where like, you won't have a country anymore if you don't vote for me. Again, his humorism was like, again, when generally people believed their politicians on both sides on the country will be destroyed if the other party wins. But now the Democrats look less believable because people like him kind of just work with Rouse's like, hey, you're going to destroy something if you do what you want to do. But I'm going to let you do what you want to do because the thing you're trying to avoid, which is a government shutdown, that would be more catastrophic. It is just interesting. It is just very interesting that the thing that Schumer believes gives them the most power is not the thing that the Republicans or Trump wanted, right? Now, Trump's an idiot. So maybe those Republicans were saying it's actually we prefer a government shutdown, but it's Trump who gets the power in that instance, right? According to Chuck. Again, are we wrong to have believed you guys when you said that they were going to destroy the government? And now, whenever you guys have leverage to stop them in any capacity, right? Like, is his belief that he's going to make changes that are irreversible during the shutdown? Because it's our beliefs that he's going to make changes that are irreversible as the government's running.
With it. Shut down. This, we have to pick the fights, and I want to fight Trump as much as anybody and stop him and not give Republicans sucker help. But in this situation,
But doesn't it call the question? Doesn't the crisis create the attentional vortex that is necessary? Because right now, people have no idea that they're going to basically get rid of all of American universities and all of American science funding. Yep. We try to communicate it every night, but there's nothing like a crisis to drive that home.
But the drama of the shutdown, eliminating all of these things, would do such damage, substantively, that I couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't live with it. You know, I know there's the idea that, okay, people will sit and negotiate with us because they're doing bad things. That ain't these Republicans. They wouldn't sit with us for nothing because their overall goal. Look, the Republican Party is a new party. Right, it's controlled. It's controlled by these MAGA right billionaires. They want two things.
See, again, he's missing a really key. I mean, logically, and now I'm going to go into like the trying to understand why someone's brains function the way that it is. Probably a bad idea, but it's kind of like run out of things to do when you're watching people who control your life and are supposed to be advocating on your side do it what. Not is just poor, in my opinion, who's not super literate like most Americans are. Even if I'm reading the news every day, like there's just some things I'm like, oh, I've heard of that before. But like, okay, seems like that was a bad idea. Just on the optics of, well, Trump and the Republicans wanted it. Usually that means Democrats don't want it, right? Even if you just start there. But even when you hear it explained to you by AOC went on some of these with was it Jake Tapper? I believe I might be confusing the white-haired white men that have these shows. But explaining why this was a bad idea, and again, we just saw people in the same vein as him, Jeffries and Pelosi. Most of us on the outside. I mean, there's other senators and House people. Like we don't see them as much. They were telling us that this was a bad idea. And even when he's again, when he tries to interrupt because Schumer's going to go on a rant that he already explained poorly, because he stops at the level of these were bad people, and with the shutdown they could do anything. And our principles, very simply, is they're doing anything they want right now, and it seems like if we'll give them this CR that gives them even more power to do these bad things. So both of us generally have the camps are, well, it's not really a camp. The one tent of Schumer is, with the shutdown, they're going to do bad things that are irreversible. And we're all like, this CR means they're going to do bad things that are irreversible. And he hasn't squared that circle. He hasn't proved that the shutdown is worse than a CR. I think he gets to it.
The Republican Party is a new party. Right. It's controlled by these MAGA right billionaires. They want two things. They want to pay no taxes, so get rid of all the spending, even if it's I mean, I was up today, we had a Medicare Day of Action, Hakeem and I, and senators and congressmen went and talked about Medicaid. I went up to Montefiore Hospital, which covers all the Bronx. It's the only cancer center in the whole Bronx. 80%.
I grew up a block from Montefiore Hospital. Continue.
Well, 80% of the people there are Medicare and Medicaid, and they're the only cancer treatment. If they cut Medicaid by 20%, children would die.
Okay.
Children would die.
Okay.
And that's what would happen with a shutdown.
Well, I mean,
so you say have leverage. We should. But in this case, the choice given to us, because they couldn't, and I don't blame them, they wouldn't negotiate with the Democrats because they had all the votes because Trump is such a hammer. gave us only two choices.
So if
there was not a third choice.
Okay, so the question is, okay, these people won't negotiate. This was the one opportunity for leverage because of the need for a filibuster-proof majority. They're not going to have that on reconciliation, right? They're going to have it. Right.
There are going to be other opportunities.
But then because what people hear is like, we're going to lie in the cut until they self-destruct. Like, what's the plan? But then what is the strategic plan?
Here is the plan. Here's what we're doing right now, okay?
Okay, so he didn't push back in a way that I thought he would, because, like, the point is, like, what's stopping them from cutting Medicaid 20% right now? Like, they don't seem to be impacted by, like, there's protests, but, like, Trump's favorability rating is still positive, even if it's, like, barely positive. But let's look right now. Wow, I can't spell. Yes, I use Bing. Shut up. Oh, wait a minute. State of Union .9 disapproved. A lot more disapproval of, of Biden's. That's actually really surprising to me. I think the country's on the wrong track. Oh, so it does seem like. Oh, actually, we're finally unfavorable. It took a minute. So in March, we're finally on. I have to actually look at some other polls too. It's interesting. That's very, very, very close considering. But again, like that includes Democrats, like really among Republicans, because that's all he cares about. There we go. I just need it among Republicans. Preal rating at 47%, more registered voters seeing the U.S. heading in the right direction than any point since 2004. That's actually insane. And this is recent, right? Yes, fair. This is 2 days ago. President Trump's presidential approval ratings appear to be immune to somewhat chaotic start to his second term and most recent onslaught of tariffs and trade wars hitting all-time high, according to new poll data. The national NBC News poll shows Trump's approval rating with 47%, more registered voters seeing the U.S. is heading in the right direction than any point since 2004. Albeit the majority of Americans still say the country's on the wrong track, he holds a high rate of 51% that disapprove of his performance as a president right now, according to the report. It's interesting. Again, approval ratings and disapproval ratings are, it's not like they're interestingly, it's interesting how the perspective is working. Like 47 to 51% of the country, that's like the amount of Democrats and Republicans in the country. I think we can glean from that Republicans are pretty much unfazed. Polls sitting. Okay, but yeah, we get to this later.
There are two things I want to say. One,
it won't be later.
Every day we are hammering away at Trump. And we have a simple thought that unites the Democratic Party from one end to the other. He's asking the middle class to pay for tax cuts for the billionaires. It unites us all. Bernie Sanders likes it, and my most conservative members like it. We're hammering away at that. Today it was Medicaid. Tomorrow it's going to be, in the next few days, it's going to be tariffs. He's raising those tariffs, raising your costs, Mr. and Mrs. American, by $2,000 a year if he raises all these tariffs, so that he can use that money for tax cuts for the billionaires. He's cutting your education fund, and so your kids don't get a great education, and your school taxes will go up for that. So we have started doing this day in, day out, every day, fighting relentlessly. His numbers have started to go down from 51 to 47. If we keep at it and keep at it and keep at it, his numbers will be much lower. He will not only be less popular, but less effective. Second, we will find the most.
This is insane. So we just looked at those ratings. So his numbers will go down from 51 to 47. That will impact him how? Right? Like, that's the other thing I'm trying to think. I'm like, well, Trump's not going to run again. Well, right? It's interesting. Like, approval ratings are very different when you're not even trying to get this person. And like, how do we get his rating to go down? Republicans and people who approve of him don't listen to MSNBC, CNN, even just like smaller people that are talking in more fiery voices they're not listening. So the only way is if the economy struggles in more visible ways. Now, inflation is still going up, right? I mean, inflation is still is happening, but the rate of inflation still going up, right? Egg prices haven't gone down, but grocery prices in general are going up. Housing prices are still the same types of struggles that we had during Biden's and Trump's previous presidency and Obama's presidency. Like the cost of living is not keeping up with wages, and that's in ways that I don't know that the president can impact. Like there's going to have to be major economic strategy changes on the local and federal levels, right? Hiring is an issue. Like I'm in the New England area and cost of living sucks, but like if I got one of the jobs out here and when I get it, I mean the average salary is like somewhere like $65,000 and the cost of living is not great, but I live in a cheap spot. Like I'll be fine. As soon as I get a regular job, I'll be fine. I'm not advocating on behalf of my own issues. However, if I lived in like a red state, it doesn't really matter what it really matters if I got a job that like at equivalent level in a blue state and then left. That's where I'm really financially stable, right? But like people who do construction jobs, people who are farmers, and again, you have a lot of leverage and a lot of debt to be a farmer. Truck drivers, these people can't afford to live. And right now, I don't know if they'll blame. They're not blaming Trump right now. I overheard someone in we're going to wrap this up because Chris Hayes is not pushing back at all. But I overheard someone in a grocery store being like, so you're going to have to send me money right now. Like he's like trying to ask someone to send him money, like $200 for getting groceries. And it's like, yeah, I don't even know 200 is going to be enough. Like, and this is Bidenomics until Trump takes over. Groceries are going to be this expensive. And I am not a genius of economics. So like I took a bunch of econ classes in college, but it was like nearly 10 years ago at this point. But I have not seen cases in which we get immediate deflation in an industry after a president takes over unless we have an economic crash, which maybe Trump's trying to do. And maybe that's the goal, have an economic crash so that prices drop considerably. But like, why should grocery prices go down? If a company realizes that people are still going to buy a product at the same rate because they're groceries. People need groceries to live, and even the ones that you don't need to live that you people just want. Like again, I'm at like a Star Market or at a Whole Foods. I'm at Trader Joe's. People are still buying snacks and random stuff that they don't need, but they've become accustomed to them, and the people are seemingly more likely to decrease the impact put into their savings and paying off debt than get rid of those wants like this. And the grocery stores are aware of that. So until it gets to the point where you no longer can function financially in other areas, they're going to keep charging these high rates. So the new normal for these grocery companies are people paying higher percentages on for their goods and services, right? Same way for rent. They just kept, like during the pandemic, they kept raising prices. And now we're seeing some areas, major areas, where they thought population growth was going to be higher and prices would keep going up. Like you can, like there's some areas in like Florida where rents were like $1,000 higher than they were before. Now they're like $1,000 lower. Like they have to have pressure that impacts them, right? But like it's different with grocery prices versus like, luxury apartments going down in prices, because average housing isn't going down, right? Some luxury apartments are going down, right? And people aren't getting as many Airbnbs, so that's like getting rid of some of the squeeze, right? But it's not going down enough of a significant rate, because even at the rate, like let's say the housing prices went here and then kind of came back here, those housing prices only made sense with an expectation of wages that were going to keep raising, which they were pre-pandemic, right? There was wages in those more advanced fields closer to those cities. Those jobs stopped hiring as much for a multitude of reasons. And now people aren't moving to those areas at the same rate, right? There's a lot of issues. We'll talk about, I'll wrap this up. Let's see if there's anything he gets into.
Moments where we shouldn't give them votes. Hakeem and I met yesterday. We're exploring that right now. This is not like this where a shutdown would ensue, but we will have the higher ground. And we're going to do it. Watch us.
Okay, but here's what I would say in response to that. And again, I'm channeling people.
Yes. Hey, this is a democracy still. Let's hope it stays.
Well, here's what I'm saying is that all of those things you enumerated, which all sound like good politics to me.
Yeah.
are the kinds of things that you'd be doing if Mitt Romney were president. That, like, there's this weird asymmetry right now, which is that they are acting in this totally new way, in which they are ambitiously trying to seize all power and create a presidential dictatorship in the United States of America, and the Democratic opposition is acting like, well, if we can get their approval rate down a few points, then what? What happens?
Well, what happens is, look, first we get it way down. He's going to have much like this worked in 2017. You say now it's a different government.
It's different though.
Oh, it is different.
See, his brain, like, honestly, like, this is like Biden level brain rot, where it's like someone says he makes a point. He understands, responds to that point, and like, look, I understand what you're saying, and that would work if we had a different presidency. However, you enumerated ways in which this presidency is not the same, and your strategy will not work. And then Chuck repeats himself, and then he stops, and I'm like, oh shit! It's like, oh wait, I'm running on a script, but that script doesn't make sense based on the information I've given. But he doesn't have anything else. He's like, I have to stop them because they're going to destroy the government if they do this. Because he's like, they're already destroying the government, and they're going to do that with the means that you just handed to them. But like, he can't go anywhere else. It's like a loop, and like, there's no break clause in this. Well, I'm going to use a code. It's not a clause. It's called. There's no break statement inside of this loop. It's just like, why did you go along with them? Because they're going to destroy the government. They're already going to destroy the government. It's like, well, no, this is worse. But they're already doing the things. Okay, well, I have to stop them from destroying the government, though. I was like, but no, you're not. You're missing. There's a new thing. He just loops back to, they're going to destroy the government. It's like, but they're already destroying the government. But they're going to destroy the government. They're already destroying. Like, he can't think.
But healthcare, we beat him. Taxes, we beat him. And guess what we did? Guess what we did, Chris? We took back the House and won in the Senate, and then we were allowed to do all those good things. This is not the only tactic. We have to stand strong in certain.
This is the thing I hate the most. Jeffries does the same thing too. It's like, look what we did. Remember when we did this thing? I'm like, for two very important things. Like, your progress only matters if it's sustained. Because if it's not sustained, it's not progress. That was just a bump. And like, I'm still alive. I still exist in America now after any positive thing you did back in like 2017 or 2018. Like, that was years ago. That was a lot of years ago. I don't care what you did. You know what? Republicans don't even care what Trump did in 2016 through 2020. You know why? Because Trump calls deals that he made back then bad deals. The Canada agreement that he ripped up was the one that he made. He ripped up his own deals. No one cares what you did before if you're getting rid of it or if someone else is getting rid of it. Anyway, yeah, he's not listening.
Certain instances and not give them the votes at all. But there are instances where the two work together.
Okay. Again, I don't disagree with any of that, but the difference to me between 2017 and now, and I've been at this desk for both of them.
It's different.
It is a full-fledged assault on the constitutional order that has not been seen again.
Well, that's
certainly in my life.
That is true.
But the question then becomes...
But that's not the spending part.
That isn't. But then the question becomes, what is the role of the minority in resisting that? That's distinct from, we're going to beat them on healthcare, we're going to beat them on spending like Medicaid.
Look, if our democracy is at risk...
It is at risk, yes.
Sorry, it is certainly at risk.
Well, do you believe it is?
But if
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you believe it's at risk?
Trump doesn't obey the Supreme Court, which may happen, you led up to it here, then we will have two courts. We will have the federal courts, which hopefully John Roberts will stand up and make it happen. But we'll have the court of public opinion. And if that happens, as you pointed out, we have had rule of law since the Magna Carta. Okay? And if that happens, and the rule of law goes by the wayside.
Okay, cool. He's wrapping up. Really, I don't think he's ready for the reality that he's saying is likely. Like, if he denies the courts, which I think we all think he will, if the Supreme Court doesn't rule in his favor. Like, Trump wants the Supreme Court to rule in his favor, but he'll just like, he doesn't care about what the laws are. We've seen that. He doesn't care what rules are. He doesn't care what reality is. So what do you do then, right? Because he's like, right now, the next step is the courts, right? And we'll see if things get to the Supreme Court. It might not. There are many things that might not. Likely, a lot of things will, and likely he'll deny them. What then? Like, because he didn't say something. It's like, if they deny the Supreme Court, we'll have the court of public opinion. So what? Like, Republican voters, by a decent majority, are okay with Trump functioning as a dictator in the scope of, like, they've done a good job making Putin look like a smart guy. He says he's smart. He knows he's a genius. So it's like, I want to run things like Putin does. And Republicans think he should because I'm trying to be rude. Well, actually, I guess I am trying to be rude. Fuck off. The average Republican is less educated on both history and politics than the average Democrat. Not the average person on the right or the left, right? I'd argue the average young person on the right is probably more educated on some history than the average young person on the left, largely because of a litany of reasons. Like, you get your political positions or social positions more than anything, but your social and then secondarily political positions validated based on some almost just aesthetic stuff. In some ways, how do you appear to feel about women's rights, LGBT rights, and your perspective was like, you know, caring about allies or wars or whatnot. So like, you can, it's not aesthetic stuff, but it's like, it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to have a detailed position. It's more like, it's sometimes just like on the right side of history. Now, many of them are very aware, and I think they're learning a lot more now. Like, the reason is I think like a young conservative might know more. For one, I'm spending a lot more time when I'm talking with or debating with a young conservative versus a young liberal, whatnot. Like, you don't have, you're like, if you're at college, you're a young liberal at college, you're not arguing with people who disagree with you, so you don't have to validate the opinions that much. You're spending more of your time learning stuff at college. You're learning your career in your field. You're a young conservative, everybody disagrees with you, so you have to find some way to argue back. Now, the knowledge goal might be like, if there's 100 is the total, like, it might be like 5 is where like the average young liberal could be at, and then like maybe 6 would be the average young conservative who wants to argue. But it's like the difference is really insignificant. At the older levels, though, it's massively different. Like after college, pretty much, you're getting massive differences because, for one, many conservatives don't go to college. Like, if you get a degree, you're more than likely going to be a Democrat. For one, you probably got a degree in a Democratic area because even if you didn't go to a Democratic state, the city you work in is going to be it's going to largely influence your opinions. But general, like, all this is what we say, like, education level, knowledge, understanding of your positions is going to be varied at different points. So you do have to do more explaining to say why a position was good. You need to be able to provide facts to provide why a position is good on the Democratic position. And we're going to disagree because we have, you know, reading comprehension. But on the right, as long as you made it sound spicy enough, that's good enough. And the politicians under Trump and the right media sphere are going to defend it tooth and nail. Like, the only people that were defending Biden tooth and nail were Biden, Tyler Cohen, CNN, and actual like major news networks, and what else? The Midas Touch Network. Those guys, Biden can do no wrong. Those guys, I was watching them just like, I can't, bro. I was like, actually, Biden's brain's fine. I'm like, nigga, shut the fuck up. No, it's not, you fucking liars. Anyway, that's it. I'm trying to at least do twice a week videos on just random stuff going on in the news. I was going to do a much more detailed breakdown of this and that, but there's two main things. I don't always have time to get to it. Also, I see videos like Brian Tyler Cohen, Luke Beasley, and David Pakman. Their videos are doing great, just reacting to random shit. So I'm going to copy them. All my high energy stuff is going to be my fun gaming YouTube commentary, nostalgia stuff on my main channel. We're just going to have some fun. But if you like that, leave a like, do a subscribe, do a crime, just kidding, don't do a crime, and I'm out.